This is the Champaign-Urbana Mass Transit District Board meeting. It is Wednesday, October 20th, 2024 at 3 p.m. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Barnes.
Here.
DeBevick. Here. Delgado.
Here.
Fasella.
Present.
Friedman.
Here.
Nudo.
Here.
Ula. Quorum present.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as distributed?
So move.
Seconded. Been moved and seconded. Next on the agenda is audience participation. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the board on any topic? Please approach the podium and state your name and address. This is an opportunity to make a statement to the Board of Trustees as a whole. We do not answer questions. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes or less. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. My name's Vance Jacobs, and I live at 236 Apple Tree in Urbana, Illinois. And this is in regards to what used to be the Ruby that is now the Northeast Connect. And I'm just well aware that you have, that you have issues that you're trying to address. Some of the issues that we found that are complicating issues with the ridership is the app that only allows 2 people at a time to board the bus. It will not even set up further pickups while 2 people are scheduled. So it leaves 40-minute periods, and the entire run is 10 to 15 minutes there and back. So there's times when the bus is literally going past the person that's trying to call in to get a ride, but we're not allowed to board the bus because you have to go through the app or you have to go through the telephone. So there's the same issue that we've had 4 people sitting at Lincoln Square that are trying to get on the bus that are not allowed to get on the bus because they haven't set up a app or telephone call, while 4 of us are on the phone trying to get through to set up a ride. But yet there's 1 person that's scheduled and 3 people that's trying to get a ride. Our concerns are, why are we not allowed to ride the bus from Lincoln Square, and it's going one direction, it goes 2 miles, it has little outlying areas, and I've had this discussion. I got a list of 12 people here that have the same problem. So we're fighting for a time slot, the busiest time slot, when everybody's trying to get where they need to be, between 7 o'clock and 9 o'clock. After that, it dies down. So no problem getting the bus during the day, and that's what we wanted. We wanted some daytime service, but we enjoyed the scheduled ride in the morning where everybody knew they had to walk 2 blocks, 3 blocks to get a ride. We could get a ride, we could be on time. Now everybody's late for work. One guy that was generally 30 minutes early is always 4 minutes late every single day. And one other problem is just getting through to schedule a ride, whether it be the app or whether it be a phone. 20 minutes this morning for me, the next guy that got on the bus, the driver went outside of the app to pick him up with clearance from the dispatch and alleviated a ride. Why does the bus run back and forth and back and forth and not just pick up this person, this person, this person because they can't get through? We're sitting there, we can wave our hands, hey, need a ride, but we're not allowed to. We are not allowed to get on that bus unless we've talked to somebody, sat on the phone for 20, 30 minutes, and that happens frequently. And I was told by a supervisor that it's not going to change. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Okay, Moving on, is there a motion to approve the Champaign-Urbana Mass Transit District Board meeting minutes from September 25th, 2024, open session?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes as circulated.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll move on to communications. Is there any communication from the board? Seeing none. Carl, do you have anything? Okay, next is the Champaign County Regional Planning Commission Long Range Transportation Plan 2050 presentation. Go ahead.
Two things real quick. I see we beat pre-pandemic numbers last month. Is that correct?
We did. I was going to talk about that during my report. Yes.
That's coming up
Okay.
very shortly.
No.
Okay, the CRC Planning Commission Long Range Transportation Plan 2050 presentation.
Can you hear me okay? All right, thank you. My name is Susan Bergstrom. I'm the planning manager with Regional Planning Commission, and I'm here to take up just a little bit of your time to present the Long Range Transportation Plan 2050. We've been working on this in coordination with MTD for the last 2 years, and we're finally at the point where we have a draft plan that is undergoing public review, and we're hoping to finish that up within the next couple of months. Can I get the next slide, please? So we have a web plan for the LRTP 2050. This is not a paper document, so we're asking people to go to the website. We have provided a link on the presentation here. I'm assuming you're going to get the slides after, hopefully. And you can just go to the website and you'll see that we have 6 different tabs across the top: an overview, existing conditions, goals, 2050 vision, public involvement, and appendices. This time around, since we do this plan every 5 years, we have 5 different goals, and those are safety, reliability, sustainability, equity and quality of life, and connectivity. And under each of those goals, we have a goal statement that further explains what we're trying to achieve. And we have objectives and benchmarks that were going to help us measure achievement over the next 25 years. And finally, we have strategies that assign activities to QOTS member agencies as well as our staff to help achieve the plan. The vision section is kind of the meat of the plan. It's where we have status from 5 years ago showing our progress on the transportation projects in the area, and also where we're at with the strategies that were assigned 5 years ago. The next section is about future projects, and we divide that into 2 different things. We have projects that are fiscally constrained, which is a federal requirement. So all the projects that we list in our transportation improvement program for the first 5 years of our planning horizon are going to be listed in that section. And MTD is always very good about getting us their projects to make sure that we are including everything that they're looking to do. So that's great. And then we have another section under there that is the unfunded, otherwise called illustrative projects. And we have just one thing that might relate to MTD under that list of 56 or 57 projects that are unfunded, which would be the installation of high-speed rail corridor between Chicago and Champaign that would impact downtown Champaign here. So with that, we want to make sure that everyone's aware of our public outreach efforts to date, and also that we have a few more weeks, not even, about a week and a half left, where we're going to be taking comments from our agencies and also the general public to see what changes we need to make to finalize the plan. So in 2023, we had phase 1 public input. That was from April to October of 23, where we were trying to ask people to identify what routes they take through town, what kind of modes of transportation do they select, what kind of obstacles do they run into, what do they need to see in our transportation system to improve their travel in the community. During that time, we attended 13 community events. Instead of asking people to come to us at public workshops, we go to them. So we attend different already established events and talk with people and ask them to complete surveys and look at maps and give us their input. This year, in April through July, we had our phase 2 involvement that focused more on what our future goals should be, what our future project priorities should be. And in that time, we attended 12 community events with surveys and maps. You might have seen us at the Juneteenth celebration here in the MTD parking lot and other places where we've been around town to get that kind of input. Our final phase started September 16th and is going through next Friday, November 8th. And during this time, we're reviewing the draft plan. We made it available in paper form at several locations, including here at the terminal. And we're just taking public comments. We're taking any, if there's agencies that find that we miss projects or they want to add a strategy or something, then we can go ahead and add that in time for finalizing the document. So our next step, if I could get the next slide, please. We're going to finish up the round 3 public involvement. We're going to make the changes that are, as we discuss them at a staff level, based on all the comments we receive. We're also going to organize all the comments we received in the last 2 years so that every member agency, including MTD, can have access to the input so that you can use it in your own planning efforts. Our final steering committee is going to be on November 22nd, when we're asking the steering committee to sign off on the final plan before it goes to QWAT's technical and policy committees on December 4th and December 11th for final approval. And so at that point, we will be able to send the final approved plan to IDOT and Federal Highway Administration and also the Federal Transit Administration so that we can get that on the books for another 5-year time period. And one of the main things that I want to make sure that everyone understands is that federal and state grant funding is not going to come to our community unless the long-range transportation plan is approved and in place, and that means for transportation projects, of course. So we want to make sure that we do a good, thorough job of getting all the projects that all of our member agencies have and into the document now while we're in the process so that there will not be any delay or turning down of any funding from the federal or state levels. So with that, I'm here to take any questions or comments you might have, and I sure appreciate your time.
Any questions or comments?
Well, the board is thinking about potential questions. I would like to just say to the board that we have a great relationship and partnership with the Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is QWATS, who does this long-range transportation plan. The LRTP has been a significant document for many, many years, and they do a great job with it, and really appreciate Susan's and her team. I presume that you have a team working on it. It's not all just you?
Oh, it's all me.
It's all you? Okay.
We have quite a few people working on it.
Yeah, it's a big undertaking, and they do a great job, and is a great product that comes out of the Metropolitan Planning Organization, the MPO. And as Susan indicated, it's critical for us in order to receive much, if not all, of the federal and state funds that we get. So it's a critical piece of work.
I do have a question. How many different entities are there that have input to your process?
Well, our main member agencies are City of Champaign, City of Ravenna, Village of Savoy, MTD, University of Illinois, Champaign County, and IDOT. But we reach out to all kinds of different places. With this LRTP, we have a requirement to include the metropolitan planning area, which is the urban area defined by the census as a population of 50,000 or more in a core area, so that's Champaign-Urbana and Savoy and Bonneville. But we also have to include any area that we think might become part of the urban area core in the next 25 years. And that also includes the village of Tolono and the village of Mahomet in this case. So we have reached out to all of these communities and reached out to their residents and businesses to get input.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from the board? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your time, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Susan.
Next on our agenda is a presentation from Volkert.
All right, we have a gaggle of people from Volkert here to introduce themselves to you, so I'm going to invite them up to the podium here, and I think they're just going to be introducing themselves one by one, but this is the team, the primary team at least, that MTD will be working with on real estate projects. So if you'll recall, you recently approved an agreement, a contract to award to Volkert as a real estate consultant. So they're just here to present themselves to you. So Teresa, I'll let you take it away.
Okay. Good afternoon. I'm Teresa McClure. I am from Volkert, so this is my team. We're delighted that we got chosen in regard to the real estate RFP that you guys put out. So we're going to do a little bit. We didn't do a formal presentation. We do have some materials that we printed out, but I want to kind of introduce the team, and then each person has their expertise, so they'll come up and they'll talk, and then we'll open it up for some questions. So starting out, we have Roger.
Thank you, Teresa. Thank you. So my name is Roger Ostoff, and I'm with Volkert. I've been here with Volkert for a little over 11 years. I was former Illinois Department of Transportation for 8 years. So our company offers quite a few disciplines in addition to real estate. Some of the folks represented here, Mark heads up our local appraisal team. We have some folks on our real estate team. We are a civil engineering design services company. We are going to be celebrating our 100th year next year, so we're doing something right for a certain amount of time. But we are 1,500 strong, and so in Illinois we have a Paxton office, a Springfield office, a Collinsville office, and a Freeburg office. So we are very much a part of the fabric of Illinois. Some of our other disciplines besides real estate and appraisals and civil engineering, we have survey, full survey services, and then GIS services as well. So we appreciate, again, this opportunity to speak with you today. So Teresa, back to you.
Yeah, and I'm going to throw it to you, Mark.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark Bushnell. I'm the lead appraiser at Volkert. I just wanted to give you a brief overview of our department and our resources. In-house in Illinois, we have 5 on staff, 4 licensed, 2 certified, and 1 MBA administrator who does research and support. Additional resources, we have relationships with over a dozen valuation firms, and we cover a full spectrum of agency acquisitions. We work with the state agencies, local agencies, utility companies. We do everything from project acquisitions to water, wastewater plant appraisal work. So we cover everything in that eminent domain condemnation realm, and we also do excess land valuations for the Department of Transportation when they've got excess land supply that they want to liquidate. So we do valuations just on a single fee basis to determine what a market value might be for a single property, in addition to the partial acquisitions for strip takes and projects associated with those types of acquisitions. So basically, that's our valuation group, and we are strong in Illinois as well as the surrounding states. We probably cover about a 5-state region with the credentials of our staff. Jody.
Thanks, everyone. I'm Jody Griffel, and I have been with Volkert for the past 5 years. I typically work with the DOTs and the local agencies, and I am the person that makes sure that all the steps are followed in accordance with the Uniform Act so that all funding remains secure. I work one-on-one with 6 districts throughout Illinois, and there are several other local agencies that we do a lot of work with. I did bring some pamphlets today to hand out that kind of explains the Uniform Act and things that we have to do to stay in compliance with that. So I will leave those here for you all to look at a later date and time. Cindy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Cindy Largent, and I am a real estate specialist. I do acquisition work and title closing.
If we have any questions or comments from the board? Sure.
I was curious, Cindy, you're doing closings and title work. Do you do brokerage, or you're just sort of on the search and title side?
More, probably what, search and title? It's,
I can answer.
okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead. It's hard to explain.
So, yeah, I mean, so we do have a title group in the Collinsville office. So we do have searchers, probably, I think we have 8 searchers on board. We do not do necessarily closings as far as that goes, but we do the searches and do the full title. So do you want to talk anything else?
What Cindy does for us on the title side and the closing side is when we go out and get signed offer documents, before they get submitted to IDOT so that they can perform their closing, we have to make sure that all exceptions that came up on title have been cleared. So if there's any ingress and egress or utility easements, we have to get additional documentation to clear those interests from title, and Cindy coordinates most of that effort. Any other questions? Yes.
So do you have anybody who does, brokerage or could help set lease rates for, if we have property we're renting out, things like that? Do you guys have anybody on board that does that sort of thing?
Jody, I can probably answer
Yes,
that.
go ahead.
So in our valuation group, we have worked for clients before in situations where they're leasing properties and they want to know what a market lease may be for renewal or negotiations. We actually go out and do the research to basically appraise what the value of that leasehold estate is and give them a range of what the market looks like for the type of property with the given characteristics in terms of whatever that lease might be they're trying to renegotiate. So we do handle that work.
Do you market properties for lease as well?
We do not. Basically, the brokerage functions that I'm aware of that we perform are basically within the acquisition of partial interest rights for our utility clients.
Any other questions?
Okay, thank you, Volkert team.
No, thank you so much. We appreciate it, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is the Managing Director's Report. Carl?
Good afternoon. Okay, Alan, we can talk about ridership now. I am very happy to see that you're excited about our ridership level. I can tell you that, thank you, that this has been a long, strange journey for us and transit all across the country. With the pandemic and then the employee shortage, and so there have been a lot of struggles associated with that. As you know, we got back to 100% of our service level in August of this year, and so it will be interesting to see how the whole year progresses. And as Alan noted, September was great. It looked really good. I do want to caution you that so far, the way that the fall is progressing, I don't know that this still is going to, this kind of somewhat explosive growth will continue, because the weather has been very nice and very mild, and so, lots of people are still walking and bicycling and scootering and that kind of thing. So, I don't know what October will look like, but I think that historically, October and February are our two biggest ridership months, and I don't think October of this year is going to be setting any records. It will be better than October of last year, but I don't think it will be a record-setting October, just because look out the window, it's beautiful, and it's been beautiful. So, here we are. So anyway, in September, the total ridership was almost 1.3 million, and that is a 27.1% increase over September of last year. And then our year-to-date ridership, so July, August, and September, is 14% over that same 3-month period in the previous fiscal year. And then the next slide, you'll see that really graphically shows what the monthly ridership is doing. So this is September, but as Alan noted, 2019 is the pre-pandemic, the immediate past pre-pandemic month, and it was a good month. We were building back ridership then, also post MCOR, and so we were feeling pretty good about that. We had some years of slump because MCOR had our entire system on reroutes, and it just was pretty messy for riders, and so we were starting to see a comeback from that, and then boom, 2020 happened, and then you can see how our Septembers have come back since then. Our operating revenue, September of 2024, was 5.8% above September of 2023, and that leaves us with a year-to-date operating revenue increase of 5.1% above fiscal year 2024. The operating expenses, September saw a 9.9% increase above last year, and the year-to-date is 7.4%. Keep in mind we're at 100% service level, and so that's certainly that's a 20% increase in expenses just at a base level. Plus we've had cost of living increases on wages and that kind of thing. So aggregated over the entire month of expenses, we're pretty happy with a 7.4% increase over last year, since last year was suppressed. Our year-to-date revenue and expenses, the operating revenues were $470,000 above budget, and the operating expenses were $1.1 million below budget. With that, I want to point out that next Tuesday will be a day of infamy, no doubt, but it also is Election Day, and so we are providing free rides on that day to help break down barriers on civic involvement in this community. And so let your friends and neighbors know that they can ride the buses for free on Tuesday, November 5th. And just real briefly, I want to mention on, I wish he hadn't quite scooted out, but the gentleman who spoke earlier, don't want to get into a lot of depth, but we are working on the issue within the Northeast Connect. Phil, I know that that's something that you have some concerns about. We share his concerns. We appreciate his ridership and apologize that the residents in that area are experiencing some frustrations with that service. We are working with the vendor of the app that is used for scheduling that service. And while we don't have a solution yet, our operations staff is working on that via the vendor. So I didn't want to leave you hanging on that. We could, if you're interested, we could have Jay give you an update on that down the road. And then the final thing, hopefully you noticed when you arrived today that both elevators are working at Illinois Terminal. If you want to applaud, you can, but you don't have to, because that also has been a long journey. Thank you for the polite air applauding. That has been much longer than we were told that it would be by the vendor, and it has been a pain in the neck for a lot of the users of this building, but both are functioning as of today. So that, well, I mean, as of last week, so that's great. With that, I will take any questions you have through page 34 of the report.
Just a couple quick things and a comment. I think it's great that we're doing the free ridership for Election Day. How are we promoting that? Are we doing anything extra to let the public know?
Yeah, we put a press release out to all the media outlets, and most of them, the newspaper and the television stations, have posted items about that. We have been promoting it on our social outlets, and so that's the primary way that we're doing it.
As I understand it, you can vote anywhere now. You don't have to go to any precinct that you were designated to go to anymore. You can vote anywhere, and they just pull up your ballot based on your district, and they print it right there in front of you. So I think that's a good thing that we're doing. The second thing is, in your notes on the second paragraph, you mentioned that the full actual cost of the expanding service to Carl from Madison, at Curtis and Mattis, is going to run on us about between $600,000 and $1 million. And I am all for this. We got to figure out a way to get this paid. But and I don't. It's not on the agenda. But I think at our pre-board meeting, we were made aware that Phil's had some success with walking through with some of the ag people that. So that if it comes to fruition, how do we propose of picking up these expenses?
Yeah, this was reported this is in my report, so it's okay to talk about, even though it's not specifically identified on the agenda. The context of this was on October 15th, I and several other downstate transit system CEOs testified to the Illinois Senate Transportation Committee. And one of the things that I mentioned in that, as we were talking about state funds and the availability of state funds, the continued availability of state funds for the downstate transit operations, one of the things that I mentioned is that when we have growth opportunities, such as the Carl Clinic at Curtis and Mattis, that we are working towards bringing into the district boundaries, that adding service to that area comes at an expense. And we've sharpened the pencil a little bit on this estimate, and so Jay has done more work since I wrote this, And I actually know that at a minimum, it will cost annually $850,000. So if we were to start next year in 2025, the baseline service would be $850,000. If we decide that's not, the base level of service is not adequate enough, then of course it only goes up from there. If we decide that it needs more frequency or a longer hours of service, that kind of thing, then it could go north, but the baseline is $850,000. Well, that's, you know, we're talking $1 million here and $1 million there, and pretty soon you're talking about real money, right? You know, my concern was if the state fund for downstate transit is being stressed, then that's a problem. But I will also add, that wasn't specifically a part of that testimony to the senators, but since you asked, I'll mention that, you know, we have to match those grant dollars. So even if the state is able to figure out the transit fiscal cliff that many people in the state have been talking about, primarily in the Chicago region, but it's a statewide issue. Even if that gets addressed, we've got to be able to match those grant dollars. And so that's 35% of the cost. And so at $1 million, we've got to come up with $350,000 on top of next year's wage increases and increased fuel costs and insurance costs and all the other things that we are experiencing year in and year out. So you're right. That's why I'm noting this, just to kind of put a pin in it for everybody to talk about. We need to have conversations about how to address funding the increase for service expansion.
And so we do have on our agenda the levy proposal for next year, correct?
Yes.
So are we incorporating this thought process with this?
We can, so that certainly is an option that the board can take, and the sooner we get ahead of that, then I think the better off we are. You know, one of the things that has been challenging with the tax levy is that for literally the entirety of my tenure in this position, we've had this pending lawsuit with the hospital properties and whether or not they would be taxable or not taxable. And so most years, maybe all of the years, we've had really hearty conversations about whether or not we want to set a tax levy at an estimate that would accommodate hospital properties that come onto the tax rolls. And so we have excuse me, we have done that, and this year we now know that's not going to happen. The case has largely been resolved. There are still some, you know, final dollar amount settlement issues that need to be resolved, but we know that the case isn't going to continue on relative to are they taxable or not taxable. So when I did the estimate this year, I just did it without any assumption of hospital costs, and it just was a really standard, for the first time since I've been in this role, it was just a standard tax levy calculation. But as I was doing it, I became really concerned about, we've got new service on the docket coming up, and we have new annexations coming up that are on top of when newly annexed property is treated like new construction with the property tax extension limitation law, PTEL. People call it tax caps, so I'll just refer to it as tax caps. That's not a very good name for it. It's a little bit of a misnomer, but that's what the general public knows it as, so I'll just call it tax caps. Tax caps say that new construction, which includes expiring TIF properties and newly annexed properties, they all are treated as new construction, and you can only you can only capture the EAV, the equalized assessed valuation for those properties in the first year that they come onto the tax roll. And if a taxing authority such as MTD doesn't capture it in that first year, they never can again unless they go to the community for a public referendum. All of that to say, sorry, this is probably a really long answer, Alan, but property tax laws in Illinois are very complicated. So I'm trying to give you a straight answer, but it's complicated. As I was doing the calculation, I am concerned that we're not going to be able to, the board gave us direction to look at and set up public hearings for, I think, close to 10 areas, large areas for annexation. And we may not be able to, we can annex them into the district boundaries, but then not capture their EAV in our levy. Yeah. And so when we're also talking about service expansion, there's tension there. And so I am concerned about that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I'll save my other ones for when it comes on the agenda. Okay. Just two more quick compliments. One is on Phil for achieving what he set out to do, and I'm very happy he did that on our behalf. And the second compliment's to the finance director, who regularly posts our investments with the interest rates and what we achieve from our reserves. And as you know, the county offices did not do that, and it's costly to them to the tune of about $2 million for not, using the best and highest rates and also local people. So I'm just very happy that we have that to the board. It's never, when I was on county board, it never is posted. They never knew about it. So.
Alan, let's not encourage anybody to poach our staff, okay?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Carl, do you have anything further?
I don't think so. I think that was everything I had.
Okay. George?
Okay, I've got several things. First of all, a clarification. Alan mentioned pre-board meetings. If he was talking about what was going on in this room before the meeting was called to order, there were some conferences among trustees, but I didn't see any conference that involved more than 2 trustees. So I think we've conformed to OMA from that point of view. I presume council will correct me if I'm wrong. Second point, I would like to know more about the complaint the gentleman made at the audience participation. I gather he was talking about the Northeast Direct. If the app isn't working, what can we do as a temporary expedient? It's just not acceptable to leave people hanging. Can we, for example, take telephone calls? We can't just leave people sitting at the curb.
Yes, we can and do take telephone calls, and we also agree that it's not acceptable, and we are actively working on it. The app does work. It's just that, it works in terms of taking a reservation, but there are some parameters within the app that are, Jay, it might be better for you to come up here and speak to this, because I'm a couple people removed from it, but my understanding is that there are some parameters within the app that are restricting the capacity on the vehicle, and that's coming into conflict with, if one person is scheduled and they then need to get to Lincoln Square to connect with another vehicle, but then this person calls in and they may see this vehicle going by, but that trip is already in the process of being completed, then this person is getting skipped because this person, the first person on the bus, it has already been scheduled to arrive at Lincoln Square so that they can connect with the fixed drop bus. So I don't know if that's a very good explanation of anything.
I presume we're using those small vans,
Sorry?
those small van-type buses, and what's their
Correct.
capacity?
That's correct. That's what we're using.
What's their capacity?
Oh, what is their capacity? I think,
14.
including the driver, it's 14 people, so 13 passengers.
So we certainly ought to be able to accommodate those people.
Yeah, so I looked at our trips this morning, and, he said that it only allows 2 people to board. That's not true. I noticed at that time we had 4 people ride, for example, today. So I don't know what his experience is, but there's no hard set limit to say only 2 people can ride. What it does do is looks at who's requested a ride, where it's going, where it needs to be dropped off, who's requested a ride next, and it calculates all of this in terms of timing to try to respond to the demand as it goes along. And it's truly an on-demand service, so you can't book a ride in advance, and it's ultimately depending on who is interested in a ride at that time. So there are parameters, though, that can be adjusted, and we're working with our contractor VIA. In fact, I believe they've implemented some of these changes this week to allow better grouping, or expanding the amount of time that somebody can be on the van in order to accommodate more people. So for example, if somebody is in Northeast Urbana and a few rides come in, it may take you around and pick people up. Well, the question is, how long should you be allowed to be on the van before you need to be taken to your drop-off? How long is reasonable? Because there's an element of grouping that we want to happen. If we just took one trip directly every single time, then we couldn't carry very many people. If we allow you to be on for an hour and a half, we could group a lot of people, but it wouldn't be very convenient. So we're trying to find the balance there ultimately. So we'll continue to work on adjustments and things like that. But I wanted to clarify, there's no hard and set limit into how many people can be on board. And regarding, if he was at Lincoln Square and he was trying to wave the van down, the operator should not pick them up because it is on demand, and the system knows where it's supposed to be going and when, and future rides would depend on that. So if they were allowed to get on, then the system wouldn't know where the van should go next, and it would delay the next people and kind of cause a snowball effect. So ultimately, it may sound harsh, but that's kind of how this system works, that you can't just flag it down. We take it through the app and we take phone calls, but our dispatchers would enter the information, the ride information, just the same as they would take it through the app and put it in the system and let the system prioritize how the rides would work.
I probably don't need to prompt this, but I would hope you would be in touch with that gentleman.
I don't know if we have his contact information, but we can look that up. I know he's talked with us before.
Got his name and address at least.
Yeah, we've talked with him before. We met with him at one of the events prior to launching.
I guess one thing just for the viewing public, my understanding is since we have launched Northeast Connect, we have more ridership with Northeast Connect than we did overall with the Ruby before.
Yeah, that's true.
So part of the effect of this is people really are able to utilize the on-demand service. But we got a lot more people trying to ride than we did before, so we're going to have to shift some things around to accommodate the fact that we've got more people riding, which is a good thing. We want people using our service.
Yeah.
But there's some growing pains involved. I guess all I would ask is if you wouldn't mind, give us an update on how things are going next week, and I'll try to hop on Northeast Connect a few times this month and see what I can do.
Yeah, so for clarification, we do have more ridership. We are offering it more hours of the day, right? The Ruby used to operate, 7 to 9, and then 4 to 7 or something like that. So just in the peaks, we've extended it throughout the day. So, and the coverage area is significantly larger too. So, we do think that it's overall an improvement. Although, in a very specific case where, you like the fixed route, it took you exactly where you wanted to go, when you wanted to go. We can't guarantee that anymore as a fixed route is what that is. So, yeah, I mean, it's a technology that we're using, and we have some ability to influence it with the help of our vendor. And we've looked, and when we heard about this complaint, we found out that there was 97.5% of the proposals were accepted. Or were offered a ride. So out of the 2 months since we launched it, there was 31 or 33 requests that we didn't have a vehicle available for. So I don't know what a great number is for that, but 97% seems pretty good.
If you could provide us with some metrics as to which ones were being missed, because I mean, 97% seems good, but if you have a job, missing work 2.5% of the time will get you fired. So, we've got to get better than that, and I think we can, but we might need to look at, hey, when are we missing these? And see if we can, I think we can get better. The other thing, I mean, I'm sure you guys are considering all your options. If it really is something to where we have, peak times where things are really bad and there's some points we could hit, could we allocate another vehicle or do something that's quasi-fixed route where it's like, hey, at 7 o'clock, we're going to have one that hits this to try to take some pressure off of Northeast Connect if we need to. I mean, I think you guys are a lot smarter than me with this, and you're going to figure it out. But it's going to get better. I don't think if a supervisor actually said it's not going to change, I think we can assure the public that this is going to change and get better.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that characterization. It might have been exactly what he was asking for, whether it be, the flag stop or, that the ride needs to go through the system. I think that, I'm not sure what exactly was asked of it, but yeah, I don't think anybody would have said that, this is the system, this is how it's going to be. Nothing will ever change. I don't think that was the case, but I wasn't there either.
Any other comments or questions for Jay? Anything further for Carl?
I got one more for you, Carl. You mentioned the solar array expansion, that our bid proposals are high, and that you're discussing options with the Illinois Department of Transportation. Pure speculation, but are we thinking of doing something to cross University Avenue, or what is it you got percolating?
Well, Phil, the next item on the agenda is a discussion about that very topic. So I'll just hand it back over to the chair to move through the agenda.
Okay, next is the 803 rooftop solar array expansion update.
And I am inviting Ashley up to have that discussion. I think Ashley and I both will participate.
Hi, thank you. So Carl asked me to give you all an update on this project. It has taken a bit longer than we expected, and it's still in process. So what I'm going to do is give you an overview of the history of the project so that you have a little bit of context. I'll try to move through it as quickly and efficiently as I can, and then we'll open it up for discussion or any questions. So in February 2022, IDOT awarded MTD 2.1. Can you still hear me? To expand our solar array on the roof of 803, and that's our maintenance facility at 803 University Avenue. So at that point, the first thing we generally do is hire a project engineer, and that engineer in this case is Dewberry Incorporated, I believe is their full name. And what that engineer does is they'll help us finalize the scope for the project. They'll design the project. They will document the engineering specifications so that a contractor can evaluate and bid on the project. And they also prepare an independent cost estimate, which is useful for a number of reasons. One, it allowed us to apply for a grant. So that independent cost estimate allows us to then ask for, state or federal money. But it also allows us to evaluate any bids that come in. So then when we listed the project for bid, and actually before I get to that, there are two main components to this project that make it a little bit more complicated than usual. So it's not just the installation of a solar array, but it's also some roof reinforcement that's necessary at the 803 facility in order to support the additional weight. So we listed it, we put out an invitation for bid in May of 2023. As a result, we only received one bid, and the bid was 91% higher than our independent cost estimate. So when it is that much over what we anticipate it to cost, we need to provide some sort of justification, but we also have to have the money to cover that additional difference, and neither of which we were prepared to supply at that time. We didn't have that money set aside in the budget, and we weren't able to justify that additional cost with the state or for our own budgeting purposes. So at that point, we stepped back to reevaluate the scope and kind of see if we just didn't have enough competition in the field, if we missed something in our scope of work that we didn't calculate in our independent cost estimate. And we actually took some time to evaluate if that was the right site for the solar installation. So during that time, we also actually looked at the east lot here at Illinois Terminal across the railroad tracks and evaluated the prospect of installing a solar canopy over that lot to see if that would maybe produce more solar or be less expensive. That didn't end up panning out. There's actually an Ameren line through that lot with a significant easement that limits the space that we can install a solar array there. So we did a little investigating, but ended up ultimately coming back to the roof of 803 to see how we could more competitively bid the project again. And I will note during this time, we have to periodically be in touch with IDOT and get additional concurrences. Because it is their grant funding, they have to review every time it goes out to bid or every time we change the scope. And so that adds a little bit of time throughout the process for them to review it at different points. So we reassessed the original scope. We gathered some additional funding. We looked at some Buy America restrictions for solar arrays in terms of adding maybe federal funding. That didn't really pan out. Ultimately, we updated the bid packet for clarity. We adjusted the scope. We also expanded our distribution list to try to get more prospective contractors to bid on the project. And we ended up relisting the project in June of this year. And unfortunately, again, we only got a single bid, and it was over our independent cost estimate pretty significantly. So we haven't acted on that bid yet. Right now, we're still working with, as Carl mentioned, we're still working with IDOT about how we can proceed with this project, given the limited and high cost of the bids that have come in. I think that is all I have for my summary. Is there anything you wanted to add?
I don't think so. That was really comprehensive. So Phil, I know you had a specific question about were we looking at changing the geography basically?
Well, I mean, you explained it with the IDOT thing. I didn't realize it was an IDOT grant, so that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, outside of answering that specific question, which you did, I think that's it.
Excuse me, I missed something that you said. the latest bid came in how much over?
I don't know if I can say exactly because it's not public, but we only received one bid, and I can say it came in over 50% higher than our independent cost estimate.
I've got a couple things for you, and I'm sure you guys are probably way ahead of me on this, but our tax accountant, or one of my clients' tax accountants that I've done at this point over $100 million worth of solar work for, is of the opinion that things like roof reinforcement are ITC eligible. So the federal investment tax credit could be applied to things like if you have to replace or rebuild a roof, you can get, if you're doing the Buy America thing, depending on your census tract, we could probably get 40% of that rebated back by the federal government. And governmental agencies and nonprofits are ITC eligible. I don't know if have we factored that into our roof reinforcement bids, or?
The problem for us with that is that we have to follow federal regulations in terms of Buy America. And so to receive that credit, that becomes a federal revenue source for us, and we have to then comply with federal regulations. We have not been able to find, and we looked for a solar panel manufacturer that complies with Buy America. And so that there's conflict there that I don't believe will make us, would allow us to be eligible for that.
We are eligible for that, but we aren't eligible for the Buy America portion of it. So I think if they were Buy America compliant, we would get an additional percentage point in terms of the rebate. But the project itself is eligible for the rebate. We are working with Baker Tilly is helping us navigate some of that information.
Yeah, I mean, the interpretations I've heard is that if the steel is American, then it counts because there isn't a way to get solar panels, but some people may also be playing fast and loose with that, and I understand you guys are ahead of me on that. Have we, and I mean, you don't need to answer this, but I think it's a good idea to be aware of the fact that the Solo Cup's excess land on the north side of the property is on the market. It's a really interesting location because it's just across Norfolk Southern from us, and I think Norfolk Southern's probably going to take that line out of service fairly soon. But you know, that would be something to keep an eye on. At this point, they've said they won't sell it separately, but I don't see anybody jumping to open up a factory where Solo Cup is, and the city of Urbana has said they're planning for that to become a residential neighborhood someday. So, you know, that would be interesting to have maybe our new real estate guys poke at and see if that works out better than putting it on the roof. Maybe, I don't know. The thought.
Anything else for Ashley? Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Next on our agenda is a discussion item about the bylaws. So Carl, do you have anything to open up with?
I don't have much. So this came about because George, Trustee Friedman, had been interested in amending the bylaws and adding which, by the way, you have a copy in front of you, and it's in the board packet online, adding an amendment to the bylaws to allow for virtual participation for trustees. Since he brought that up and was expressing that interest, I wanted to put the entirety of the bylaws in front of you because they're not bad, but they, and much of them are very good, and I don't believe all of it needs to be changed. But several years ago, staff and our general counsel at the time, that was not our current general counsel, but our general counsel at the time, started to put some work into updating the bylaws. And the board at the time, specifically the board chair at the time, told us to back off on that was a board activity and that staff was not to engage in that. So we felt like we got our knuckles wrapped a little bit on that, and we stepped away from it, but then it never came up as the board chair never brought it up as something to do. So since George brought it up, I thought perhaps I could take this opportunity and not get my knuckles wrapped by a ruler and say now would be a good time, because a trustee is interested in making an amendment to the bylaws anyway. These have not been updated since 2012 was the most recent amendment. And so it's just a good practice to occasionally take a look at things like bylaws. Might all take a look at it and say, other than George's amendment, we don't want to do anything. It's all perfect the way that it is. Fine. I just think it's healthy to occasionally look at them and go through that process. And so this isn't intended to be a moment in time in which you all start expressing, I like this, or I don't like that, or we should do this, or how come we don't do that. That's not what this discussion is intended for. This is intended to be a discussion about, do you want to take a look at the entirety of the bylaws, and do you give staff, direction to, with corporate counsel's input, to give you some direction on that, and to have committee meetings with the board so that we can talk through different aspects of it and all of that. So we're not looking for the work to be done today. We're just looking for direction from you on what you would or would not like to do. Do you don't want to do anything? Do you want to just do George's amendment, or do you want to take a wholesale look at the bylaws?
Okay, comments from the board? George?
Well, I would have no objection to a more thorough look at the bylaws. You know that I come from an academic background, and at the university, when we want to do something like this, we appoint a committee. Not necessarily a two-person committee. This could be a committee with some board participation and some staff participation, and certainly council's participation. It seems to me that it's worth looking at whether some of our bylaws, our present bylaws, are out of date. I've got a lot of experience in doing this on campus, and I would be glad to participate in such a committee. But I do believe it should be a joint effort involving board members and staff members and council.
Other comments?
Yeah, I'm in George's camp. I think group participation would be good. Maybe addressing bylaws first and policies second. And even to the point of, after this committee made some recommendations, we do a half-day retreat so that we could knock it out with everybody involved after the committee. But it does demand, I spent a couple hours reading it, and I think by and large it's as current today as when it was written back in 2000, but there are some things. And some of the cleanup that we talked about is that, some of the terminology for chairman, be chairperson, and other things that are more current in today's world, but that can be cleaned up before you even start. But I'm in your camp.
Yeah, well, we can solve the terminology problem simply by resolution instructing the clerk to change obsolete terms into current terms. By the way, chairperson is an anathema term to me, but I would prefer the term chair. But that's a minor detail. I do believe we should act soon on the amendment I have proposed, because it would allow participation of board members from, who are not physically present under very limited conditions. Notice that, I think council could verify this if he has not already. I've drafted this after careful reading of the appropriate section of OMA, and included, I think, all the details that are required by that law. So it would be simple enough. I've left a few blanks to be filled in, but it would be a straightforward matter of allowing remote participation under those limited circumstances.
Thank you, George.
I didn't want to interrupt anybody else before. Yes, George, I have reviewed this. I have a couple of recommendations with respect to the language as found in the OMA. If you want me to make them now, that's fine, or if you want me to hold off until later, that's fine too. But with respect to the request, Part C, the request by a member to participate must be submitted, and there's a question there to whom. I would recommend sort of tracking the language in the OMA. It could be our secretary here. Then, with respect to the votes, I would add in the OMA portion that was added in 2023 that this is tracking, specifically calls out a roll call vote, and I think that should be added in there to make sure that it is done by roll call. I think that's probably what you intended in this language, but I would make it specific to make sure that that is specifically done there, because that is the language in that portion of the OMA. Other than that, I think the other sections do track with what is there. Obviously, you might want to do a catch-all of adding language about, obviously in as it does at the top there, it says in compliance with. Just make sure that this is to always track the OMA.
Any other comments? Do we have, go ahead, Phil.
Do you think that in compliance with the Open Meetings Act, 5 ILCS 120/7, is that an appropriate enough catch-all, or do we need to reformulate something a little bit sharper?
I think what I'm referring to is put something in here to make sure that it says that this is to be in compliance. In compliance with, I mean, it's very close. I would just probably do some wordsmithing, frankly.
Or any future updates so we don't have to upgrade every time they change the OMA?
Basically, yes. Yeah.
And then what do you think about the 24-hour thing? I'm guessing in writing we could say something about it being electronic, or is that pretty much the same thing anymore?
Yeah, I think the 24 hours, I believe, is sufficient. I think actually under the OMA you could probably even do less than that. But I mean, 24 hours is a good requirement to basically hold members accountable of, hey, if you think you're going to miss this, then let's do it, so you're not popping up at 5 minutes before the meeting saying, hey, I need to be on Zoom.
That's fair. Carl, what kind of a heads up does our tech team need in order to accommodate something like this?
I mean, I certainly 24 hours would be fine. Really, end of the day prior to a board meeting would be completely adequate. We already have the general setup, so they just would have to get the link to that individual, and if they were informed by the end of the day before, then the following morning they could email that out to the trustee who is doing that.
Dick?
Ellen?
So again, to clarify, in writing, is it handwritten, phone, text, email? What is definition of in writing?
Technically, under the OMA, it actually doesn't require a writing, but if we want to require a writing, I think...
I don't want to require it, I want to have a definition of what does in writing mean.
Yes, if we're going to require it, then I would suggest we state, letter or email. I suppose we could include fax, but I'm not so sure that's going to be used much anymore.
No. How about text? I mean, most people communicate these days in text.
I would leave that to the board. You can certainly, publish those in terms of making a copy. It's just easier to keep copies of texts and formal letters. But I leave that to the board. I think, yes, you could probably do that.
Okay. Bill, thank you.
Being, I guess I don't consider myself an old guy, but I really struggle with text messages. I think we should narrow it down, for Katie's sake, to email, and I'd say 5 p.m. or 4:30 or whenever she typically goes home the day before. We'd just say we'd send it to the board trustee, and we would copy the board secretary and copy the managing director. That way, if she's out sick, he gets a copy of it, and we get it out before 4 p.m. the day before the meeting. Something like that is what would be the best way to catch all requests, just in case.
That all would be perfect. I think Katie generally goes home at 2, except on board meeting days. No, I'm kidding. She goes home at 5. So end of the business day would be adequate. Copy me, copy the chair, I think, and that would be fine. So why don't we take a stab, Alex, and taking what George wrote and just fine-tuning some of these things, and we can bring this back to you in December, and we can get it inserted even before we look at the rest. Since George, you want immediate action on that, we can do that, and then take the time to do the rest of it. If I may, you mentioned a committee. Normally for this kind of thing, we would use the chair and the vice chair of the administration committee. In this current board setting, that is Alan is the board chair and Paul is the vice chair of the admin committee. And so that would not include you, George, in small group meetings. So I might suggest, because I imagine, George, you want to be involved with the bylaws because that's kind of your jam, that perhaps the chair could assign a working committee that isn't the admin committee that included George on it. That's one thing. Then the other thing is, remember that our committees are committees on the whole. So we have small group meetings where we just meet with the chair and the vice chair on occasion, but if the actual committee is meeting, it's a committee on the whole, which is all of you, and that meeting is required to be an open meeting as per the Open Meetings Act. So that's why we have small group meetings, so we can kind of have working sessions. That's why our pre-board meeting is with the chair and the vice chair of the board, because we can meet with 2 of you at a time. So just a little nuance to be aware of, but I would recommend maybe a working committee.
George?
It would be fine with me if you could bring back a refined draft at the December meeting. As to a committee, my understanding of OMA is that if a body subject to OMA sets up a subsidiary body, that subsidiary body is also covered by OMA, and its meetings would have to be announced and open to the public, just like the parent body's meetings would be.
That's correct, but only correct if the committee is larger than 2 trustees. What I was suggesting is that we have, and I didn't speak very clearly, so thank you for the question, but I was suggesting, or I meant to suggest, a committee of just 2 of you to work with staff on the work. And then, of course, it's going to come to the whole board, and we can, I think Alan was sort of suggesting that we do a committee on the whole, and we can do that if we think it's necessary. If there aren't very many changes, maybe it's just okay that we have this working committee and we just bring that to the whole board for approval if it's really simple. But we can figure that out as we move down the road. But yeah, I was just suggesting two trustees.
I would suggest that we have 2 of the board members working with council and coming up with the revisions, anything that needs to be, and then bring that to the board at our December meeting. Everyone in agreement with that approach?
Sorry, Dick, could you repeat what that suggestion was?
I'm just saying we would have 2 board members working with council, or working with staff, I should say, and basically tweaking what we have here for this amendment.
For the amendment, yes, thank you. That's what I missed.
Yeah,
so,
for the amendment, bringing it to the board in December.
Okay. I don't know that you need your working committee to be involved with the amendment, because George already did the work for the amendment. I think the working committee would be for the totality of the revisions to the bylaws. But you can do what you want.
And that would take more than a month.
Yes, that would. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Any other comments? Phil?
As far as a general review of the bylaws, I think that I'd like to hear if George has an opinion as to whether or not we need to, you seem intimately familiar both with our bylaws and parliamentary procedure. Do you feel like these venerable old bylaws need a thorough updating, or do you think this might suffice for now?
Phil, I've read the bylaws fairly recently, but not within the last 2 days, and not with the thought of, should this be revised? Just with the thought of, does this make sense? It would take a more careful reading, I think, to answer your question properly.
I think I'll trust whatever your feelings are on the issue, so if you think what we have is good, or if you change your mind later, I'd be open to reconsidering it personally.
I'll read them more carefully next time.
Any further discussion? Okay, thank you. Now we move to action items. We'll discuss resolution number 2024-3, the termination of the former Illinois Terminal Expansion Project Development Agreement.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Guy Hall to come up. Guy is our counsel for the Illinois Terminal Expansion Project, and I will let him give a little primer to you on what this is for, in case you missed the article in the newspaper today, and then we both can answer any questions that you have.
Good afternoon. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Guy Hall. I have been practicing in Champaign for about 41 years. Used to be with the law firm of Dobbins, Frager, Tenenjoy, and Pearlstein, which some of you may remember, and I'm now with the law firm of Robin Schwartz. You may also recall that we developed an agreement with an entity called Core Champaign Hockey LLC some years ago, when there was the possibility of developing a fairly complex project involving the MTD. Core Champaign Hockey, the University of Illinois, and funding from the federal government. That document materialized and was executed in 2021, but obviously, as we all know, the work never materialized. COVID was much more of a factor than I think anyone really understood at the time, even though that was a 2021 document. And so it has lain dormant for several years. There's now an opportunity perhaps to work with a different developer to address a scaled-down version of what was then proposed. And so this resolution is designed really to formalize the termination of that agreement with Core Champaign Hockey. So the three critical features of it are to confirm that it is the desire of the board to terminate that agreement because it still sits in its dormant state, if you will, and that the parties execute a termination agreement. We have drafted such an agreement for execution, and that the board authorize Mr. Gnat and the rest of staff to follow through on those details and, of course, report to the board as necessary and as desired by the board to inform it of what is transpiring. So those are the three elements of this. We're trying to keep the resolution and termination of this to a fairly simple state. Prior to this, I can inform you that on or about October 4th, I attempted to communicate with legal counsel for Core Champaign Hockey. That's a law firm by the name of Traurig up in the Chicago area. I've not yet heard from the two attorneys that we worked with in developing the original document. My intention from this point forward, if the board so chooses to approve the resolution, is to inform those attorneys and follow up on the previous work and let them know that this resolution has been passed and that we are prepared to proceed with the termination agreement, at least along the lines that we have proposed, since that document has not been submitted to them. And so that would be the process of going forward to resolve the relationship with Core Champaign Hockey. I have not been informed of any loose ends regarding any items in particular that might otherwise need to be addressed, but that's where it stands at the present time, with then the intent to be able to proceed as the board may wish with a different entity and a different type of project. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
If we pass this resolution and are unable to communicate with CORE, do we have the right to simply unilaterally declare that the agreement is dissolved?
Yeah, I would suggest that if the attorneys do not respond, that we would take the next step of being in touch with principals of the limited liability company itself. I think there has been some overture alerting them to the fact that we need to take, or we feel it's healthy to take this additional step. And the principals are in this area. So I don't anticipate any objection to it. I think your question is well put, though, and if they just didn't respond at all in any fashion, there's a way, I think, for us to indicate there's been a default, but that we've chosen not to enforce this agreement and call it at an end and go from that point forward. So I don't think they're going to say, I think it's extraordinarily unlikely that they would say, wait a second, we want to rev this back up. So But I think your point is well taken. I think there are other contingent actions that we can take, and we would outline those with Carl in the event that is necessary in our judgment.
Further questions? Alan?
You mentioned loose ends. Are there any reimbursable things that we did for them prior to the solution of this agreement that we should take on, or are we going to write it off, or maybe there was nothing?
There were some expenses that both parties took on, and we had a cost share. Part of this development agreement was a cost share structure or principle, and so there were some expenses that we both took on.
Nothing that we took on for them to be reimbursed at a later date?
Correct.
That's good. Thank you.
Anything further? Okay, is there a motion that we approve resolution number 2024-3?
So moved.
It's been moved. Seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to our next action item. We'll consider the Champaign-Urbana Urbanized Area Transportation Study Intergovernmental Agreement.
Okay, I referred to this earlier when Susan was giving a presentation on the long-range transportation plan. This is an update to the regular agreement, intergovernmental agreement that we have that forms the Metropolitan Planning Organization. Savoy is a part of the agreement. The university is part of the agreement. Champaign, Urbana, the county. And MTD, of course. And so this is an update to the agreement, and all parties are taking it up with their boards. So if you have any questions.
Move that we approve the agreement as published in our packet.
Okay, is there a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next action item, we'll be considering the update to travel policy number 11, it looks like.
Yes, yep. I was just going to say, I believe Michelle is coming up for this, and poof, there she is. So this is, I guess, do you have a presentation or and comments that you want to open up with, or do you want me to run with it? I'll just do a little primer and then give it to Michelle to explain what the changes are. But this is not a very old policy. We created it for the first time in 2016, and then very recently updated it and added Willard Airport and some other things in it. And we found ourselves almost immediately following the last update to this out of compliance with it. And so Michelle and I started talking about, gee, we really need to update this policy again so that it reflects what we are actually doing. So I will turn it over to Michelle to kind of walk you through that.
So I'm Michelle Wright, Finance Director, and out of compliance, I'm going to explain the thing we're doing is doing something more efficiently than we were doing before. So it mainly, the system before was required people to fill out a paper reimbursement form and then have paper receipts and turn all of this in, and then we would have to match things up and make sure that everything was correct and reimburse people in that way. At least the last year, we've been using Bill.com, Spend and Expense, and it's an electronic expense management system, which allows, first off, the employees no longer have to wait to be reimbursed. They're able to use a credit card that comes with the system, and we use approvals. people are only given enough authority to purchase what is allowed in our purchasing authority policy. And if they need to go above that amount, there are electronic approvals that allow their supervisor to approve additional funds. But the greatest thing about the system is people can take pictures of their receipts, totally upload it, and then they can input all the information we need. And so that then allows us to download the information and then upload it into our financial system. And it's been overall, I think, worked very well and much more efficient for everybody. And so that's why the change in this travel policy is number 5, where it talks about, briefly describes, hopefully what I just described. And then if someone is not authorized to have a credit card, because not all employees do, they would continue to use the paper form, and we reimburse them that way. Hopefully, before this time next year, we'll be coming back for another change that we will be reimbursing employees for all things on Paycom. We are doing some things that way now, but I would love to add travel expenses to that list so that everything would be electronically reimbursed. But for now, we're just talking about what's already in place, Bill.com spend and expense.
Okay, any questions from the board? Bill?
Just browsing around on Bill.com, but what does that software typically cost us a year to maintain this system?
Free.
I mean, it'd be nice if they'd pay us, but...
We do earn rewards also. We do earn rewards. Yeah, it is also, it's recommended by the AICPA as an expense management software to use. So we've been pretty happy with it. And Bloomington Transit System, I think, copied us, and they're using it now too.
Other questions?
Nick?
Alan?
Yeah, I would recommend the board change the airfare from business class to, I don't know what the current terminology is, coach, but I think in our pre-board meeting, we discussed that, and that is a fact of that they do now anyway, so that business class be changed to whatever the new terminology is for coach.
Yeah, that is a funny little legacy that we didn't, I think we just all missed until you mentioned it the other day to me. We literally, no one has ever flown business class. Business class in today's nomenclature is kind of an intermediate level of fare in between coach and first class, and I'm 100% positive that no employee of the district has ever flown business class. So again, we're out of compliance with the travel policy. We always fly coach. We should. I agree. As a part of your motion, if you make a change to that to say coach. Or whatever is the correct term, I guess we can do some research on that. But I think coach is the correct term.
Thank you.
Okay, I would entertain a motion, including the possibility of a correction there.
I would move to approve the travel policy laid out on page 87 with the amendment suggested by Al, updating it to coach or steerage or whatever the appropriate term is now.
Is there a second? Second by George. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, our final action item is to consider resolution number 2024-4, determining the amount of money necessary to be raised by the tax levy. Carl, do you have some comments at first?
Well, most of my comments we hit upon during my board report. So if you keep that in mind, this is every year, every taxing body in Illinois has to set a tax levy, and it's a two-step process. it's a two-step process for you. There are a lot of other processes that we have to take in between, but the first step is that you pass a resolution setting the estimated levy amount, and then, according to what I was mentioning earlier, tax caps and the, I'm not even going to remember the other law, all the property tax law. What is it, Phil? You know it. Boy, you're really disappointing me, Phil. It's no surprise that I can't remember it, but I thought for sure. Maybe Caitlin, do you know it? Anyway, if the levy that you set with the resolution, if it's over 5%, then we have to publish a black box notice in the newspaper and then hold a public hearing on that. If it's under 5%, we don't have to publish the black box notice, and we don't have to have a public hearing. But irrespective of which of those two paths we're on, then in, well, for us in December, but the next step is that you would actually pass the tax levy ordinance, which sets the levy, and that's what we submit to the clerk's office then. So this is step one, is setting the resolution. I mentioned earlier that I had previously, in every year previous to this that I've been in this position, going back 11 years now, I was trying to accommodate the potential of the hospital properties, and so I didn't do that this year with this calculation, and so this is just sort of a standard safe calculation of 5%. It actually is less than 5%. Is actually less than what the rate-setting EAV, calculating on that full equalized assessed valuation in our district, it's actually less than what we should then we should set it at if we want to capture the entirety of the property tax revenue. But I felt like that was a safe one. I've since been getting cold feet with that because of this additional, that Ellen mentioned, the additional service that we've been talking about, but I'm talking too much, so that's my primer, I guess.
Comments? Ellen?
Historically, what have been the recommendations over the last 5 years, 6 years? What percentages have we requested?
I happen to have brought that with me, so I don't have to guess off the top of my head. How far back do you want to go?
You got the sheet of paper, so...
Well, I can go back to 1977 if you'd like.
No,
tax cap legislation went into effect in 1996. But I'll go back 4 years if you have questions that you want to drag me back further. I have the data in front of me. In 2020, we set we proposed the levy at 18.14%. But I'm going to give you two data points. I'm going to give you what we proposed it to be, and then what it actually was when PTEL tax caps kicked in with the final CPI and growth. And so in this case, the hospital properties weren't included, and so we set it at, you set it at 18.14, and it actually was 1.4. In 2021, it was proposed to be 17.38%, and the actual was 5. Which is the tax cap amount. In 2022, it was proposed to be 17.15, and the actual was 5. In 2023, it was proposed to be 13.08%, and the actual was 3.4%. Now, this is 2024 that we're talking about today, so that's going back to 2020.
So, with two things in consideration here. One is we've got these annexations. Will the 5% capture everything that we are capable of capturing with that? And the second thing is, if you're looking at a $600,000 to $1 million additional cost for the Carl annexation, what's our level of confidence that we'll be able to have that paid for?
Yeah, that's, Alan, you're playing into the Halloween aspect of my life, because that scares me. I'm a little nervous about we're going through these efforts to do the annexations, and I don't believe the 5% will capture the EAV. And I already know for sure that we're going to struggle coming up with the local match for the new service at Carl, at Curtis and Mattis. So yeah, that's a concern.
Well, it seems to me then that the 5% request, which probably won't be met, is inadequate. I would suggest, and I will move to amend, to make that 10% and see how much of that we actually get. I presume staff would have to adjust the dollar amounts in A, B, and C, but let's try for 10. And that's a motion to amend.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Al. Is there any discussion?
Chair, may I make a comment about that?
Sure.
So yes, we can make adjustments to A, B, and C. Actually, it would just be A and C. Yes, A and C we would make a change to, because B is a reflection of what the previous year was. So we can do that. And to answer your first question with a little more clarity, what will happen is, let's say you kept the proposed levy at 5%, then you're setting the proposed levy at 5%, and I don't know what CPI is going to be for 2024. We'll find out next year. So all of this is estimates, but last year was, I have that somewhere too. Last year was 3.4%, so it was less than the 5%. So we got 3.4%. But annexations and expiring TIFs, I know this is a little repetitive because I said this earlier, is treated as new construction, and new construction is on top of what the levy is at. And so last year, if we were doing these annexations, we would have gotten 3.4%, and if we were set at 5%, that additional 1.6% wouldn't be enough to capture these annexations. And so what that 10% will do, I want to be really clear, because I know the public, and I'm a tax-paying member of this district. I live in this community, and I watch my property taxes just like everybody else does. They hear 10%, or they hear some of those numbers we'd mentioned earlier, 18%, 13%. Those are big numbers. And I want to clarify, that's not the amount that somebody's personal property tax bill will go up. That essentially creates a virtual bucket that we want to make big enough to hold the EAV that is available to the taxing district. And if the bucket is too small, if it's set at 5%, but the CPI and then all this new construction, which includes annexations, et cetera, if that actually comes in at 7%, then we never capture that 2% that we had that first year, and we never get it again. We never have an opportunity to get it again. So if you set it at 10% and it comes in at 7%, you get the 7%, you get the 3.4%, and then the difference of the new construction, but you don't get what's between 7 and 10%, and no taxpayer will pay 7% either. That difference between 3.4% and 7% is made up by the new construction. So I just wanted to put those out there because this is a very complicated, tricky issue, and so I just want to be transparent and try to get ahead of some of the people who hear a number and then react to that number without all the information.
Yeah, the numbers are kind of counterintuitive, shall we say. I think of the 10% or whatever upper limit we set as precisely that, an upper limit. We're not going to get more than that, but we'll probably get less.
Yeah, I'd feel comfortable saying we for sure will get less than that. It will not go up that much. I was never that confident with the hospital properties because the EAV that we were even using to estimate the hospital properties was a loose estimate at best, and so I never knew for sure if we were going to hit that mark or not. With this, I feel very confident that we would, if you set it at 10%, that's a big enough bucket, and it won't be at 10%. I'm confident of that. I do also, sorry, if I can, real quick, I do have the number for the 10% if you want to hear that, because this is set at $12,306,840 in the resolution. That's the 5%. Going to 10% would propose the levy to be set at $12,892,880. Though, of course, we won't get all that.
Would a 10% give enough margin, in your opinion, that it would help to defray the costs of the annexation, that whole deal?
Defray the cost of the service to the Carle Clinic?
Exactly.
Since I don't know what the dollar amount coming in would be, I'm real hesitant to try to answer that. It certainly would help to defray the cost. I mean, it's additional revenue that would be able to go toward that service, but whether or not it would be enough to, I don't believe it would make up the total local match of that service, but it certainly would go toward doing that.
Alan?
Just a quick comment. I'm very comfortable with George's proposal in light of the greater good we're going to do for providing transportation to Carle in the fastest growing area in Champaign, at Southwest Champaign. So, thank you.
Phil?
Just to throw out maybe a counterpoint on this, I think the cost of serving Carle, does sort of take us about out of our way. We have a couple of, large farm fields in the way. We have an intergovernmental agreement with the Village of Savoy that prevents us from annexing much of the property in that central south part of the district. So you've got some major inefficiencies in serving that location that drive the costs up without really producing any additional revenue to cover the space we're covering in between. The good part of that is I don't see that as a permanent issue. Eventually, the neighboring properties will be developed. Eventually, our intergovernmental agreement with the Village of Savoy will expire, and the majority of Old Savoy will come onto the tax rolls. And eventually, as we pick up more EAV in the neighborhood and our buses are stopping to pick up at people on, you can imagine these ghost neighborhoods that will exist when this develops, we'll have fares, we'll have more efficiency. So while it seems like a large number now, we fast forward 5 or 10 years, this is going to be a much more manageable area to service. It's just, unfortunately, you could have a whole conversation about the way our tax law treats farmland in urban areas or how our planning procedures favor sprawl development rather than infill development, but it makes transportation harder. But someday, I think, eventually, this is going to be a much more contiguous urban area, hopefully someday in the next few years.
Okay, so is there a motion here?
You already got a motion and a second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, the amendment was to 10%. So all those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes.
Council, do we need roll call on that?
Yes.
Okay, we can do that. Roll call, please.
And did we get the amendment approved?
Let's back up.
The motion was to amend this to approve the resolution with the amendment.
Thank you.
Let's do this the way Robert's rule says. I withdraw the motion to amend. I move to approve the resolution, and once that is moved, I will move to amend.
Okay.
You got
All
to
right.
move the main motion before you move to amend.
All right, it's been moved that we approve this. All those in favor?
Wait a minute.
Hold on, slow down.
What? The amendment.
Talking about the amendment to 10
Amendment
first?
first, yes.
I'm sorry.
And we need a second.
Yes.
Do we have a second? Alan? Okay. Now it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
No, we got a roll call.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm having a bad afternoon. It's been a long day. Okay, the roll, please.
Barnes,
Yes?
DeBevick, Delgado,
Yes?
Fasella,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Nudo,
Yes?
Ula, quorum present.
Okay, motion passes.
Okay, now that approves the amendment. Now you got to vote on the main motion.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the resolution?
As amended.
As amended, yes. Is there a motion?
George, are you going to make that?
I believe George is making that motion.
Yeah, so we need a second.
I didn't hear all that.
There we go. Now it's seconded.
Okay,
Now
George,
you do a roll call.
We have a second from Alan. Now, all those in favor, do we have to go through a roll call
roll.
once again? Okay, let's go with the roll call.
Barnes,
Yes?
DeBevick,
Yes.
Delgado,
Yes.
Fasella,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Nudo,
Yes.
Ula, quorum present.
Motion passes. That's all we have on our agenda. The next regular Board of Trustees meeting will be on Wednesday, December 4th. Notice the different timing with December. At 3 p.m. on the 4th at Illinois Terminal right here, 45 East University in Champaign. Do I have a motion that we adjourn? Paul, second? Second from Al. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for your attendance and for your participation.